100% tonight. So Kevy's on standby if I totally lose it or if I'm not making any sense, because I feel like I haven't made any sense for about 3 days. In fact, yesterday I went home, went back to bed, and I dreamt that I was driving dodgem cars around Greensboro Circuit, smashing into everybody. So there you go. I think you have better hallucinations, wouldn't you? So we have lots of readers tonight, as usual, which is fantastic. Welcome to Busybird. For those of you who haven't been to open mic night, thanks for coming out. And we're always amazed how many people come out in the middle of winter. I don't know, it's a fun night. So I'd like to think that's why people come out. But before we get into open mic night, we have a very special announcement. So we ran a novella competition early in the year. I think we opened it in January, did we, Les? December. When did we open the novella competition?
No idea. December sounds good.
2016-ish.
Anyway, it takes a few months because a novella can be from between, or our guidelines were between 20 and 40,000 words. We had 97 entries. So as you can imagine, that's a lot of reading. And then when we get down to a shorter list, we read them over and over again before we choose, because we want to make sure that we get the right story. So tonight we're announcing the winner. Can we have a drum roll?
Announcing it now.
Yeah?
Are you going to put Kev on camera?
Is Kev on camera?
Yeah.
He's on camera. If anyone, just so everyone knows, Kev is filming, taping this tonight, as he does every month, and then it goes up onto YouTube. So if you don't want to be on camera, please let him know. Or just go like this every time you go in front of the camera. Okay, so rather than wait for the winner, make him wait all night, we're going to do this at the start, because it's anticipation. So the novella is between 20,000 and 40,000 words, and the prize money is $1,000, as well as publication of the novella as a print book, as an e-book. So we will be working with this person in the next 6 months or so to get the book as good as it can be in terms of editing, and then we will do lots of lovely design and layout early next year, and it will be published around this time, if not a little bit sooner in the year, in 2017. So, drum roll. So the winner for our Great Novella Search, okay, that's enough, 2016 is Sean O'Leary for his novella called Drifting. And we will get some stills later.
Oh,
so
okay.
I'll shake your hand. I did wash my hands. So well done.
Okay, thanks a lot.
There is a check in here. It's probably the most money that any writer in the room has ever earned.
It's a nice one go for me, that's for sure.
So,
That's great.
thank you for entering,
Oh,
and well done. We look forward to working with you on it,
Okay.
and we're hoping you're going to read something.
Yeah, I will.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
okay.
It's all yours.
I just want to first say thanks, and that it's amazing that you get these prizes for writers. They really keep us going, because you need that incentive all the time. And Drifting, which won, started out as a short story called Pawn. It's P-A-W-N, and it's in my collection Walking, if you're... and I do have a few copies if you're interested. Okay, Pawn. Geraldton, Western Australia, Australia. Population 20,000. Star date August 20th, 2008. The motel with the horse racing tiles in the kitchen. Brown semi-shag pole carpet from long, long ago. A little down on my luck, bust in from Port Hedland, rock hard mining town, where I worked. Correction, where I was a wage slave in a very average pub. I arrived in the early hours of the morning and had made arrangements to pick up the key outside the motel room door under a rock or something. When I got there, the key was in the door and a note on the kitchen table to fix us up in the morning. I was waiting on the severance pay from my last job due in exactly 2 hours. My pay normally went into my bank account at 4 a.m. I'm into the habit of accessing the funds as soon as they arrive because I'm usually broke and hanging out for cigarettes. Thank God these towns have service stations or roadhouses because I was starving too. I had a shit fight with the bus driver when he pulled into Port Hedland. I had a bike with me and when I booked the ticket, the guy said there was no need to take the front wheel off the bike, which is what you usually have to do so they can store it more easily. So of course when the driver gets off the bus he says, take the front wheel off. I tell him what the guy said and he says to me, I'm the bloody bastard that has to stow the shit thing away. Take the bloody wheel off. And it's a scheduled meal break stop, so the whole busload had a laugh at me, and to make matters worse, I don't have a spanner or whatever it is the hell you use, so I have to ask Mr. Happy Driver for one, and he goes through this big shrug of the shoulders and rolls his eyes at a couple of young girls, and I'm public enemy number one. When I got off the bus at 2 a.m. in Geraldton, I was the only one getting off, so I made a big deal of taking my time. But the bus driver practically buckled the back wheel of the bike getting it out. So 2-0 to the bus driver. Anyway, at 4 a.m. I walked down from the motel, which is perched on a hill at the entrance to Geraldton, and checked my account. Only $20 in it. So I withdraw the 20, cursing the bastards that they haven't put the pay into my account. I buy a packet of Long Beach 40s cigarettes, a box of Nutri-Grain cereal and milk. I should be kept in coffee sachets by the motel, which begs the question, how in the hell do I pay them? I work it out walking up the hill. It's Saturday morning, so the guy who does the pay at the pub where I work won't be in. I'll have to wait until Monday to abuse him and tell him to get that $800 into my account. I'll find a pawn shop and put the bike in over the weekend. It's nearly brand new, so I should get $100 to keep me going. And I'll tell the owner of the motel what happened, give him my old boss's phone number at the pub to confirm the cash is coming. What a way to live.
So keep your eyes peeled for news in terms of design and launching and all that kind of thing. So we have lots of readers, so unfortunately we do have to limit the reading time, and Les is going to be timer. 4 minutes, Les. So let's start with, who shall I make first? Let's start with Belinda McCormick. Belinda's going to read a story called Lifting the Veil.
Which I probably won't get through. It's uncanny, says Michael. He flicks the edge of the photo with the back of a finger. I say. He leans onto his elbows, resumes his study. Every so often he draws breath. Then some other detail captures his attention and his words go unspoken. I consider the snapshot framed between his forefingers and thumbs. Even upside down, it's obvious. My mother was the very image of Audrey Hepburn. Her little black dress isn't quite a Givenchy, but her dark hair is worn in a French knot, and she sports a pair of the same oversized sunglasses the actress favoured. She may as well have stepped straight off the set of Breakfast at Tiffany's. But it's more than a physical resemblance. They also share that otherworldly grace, an elusive elegance that saw my mother sashay from place to place like a figure skater gliding over smooth ice. I've always felt club-footed and gangly beside her. I cross my arms and sit back, resting my shoulder blades against the back of the chair. I can't help but wonder what else Michael will see. My mother's life had begun to unravel long before the photo was taken. Mote by mote she was torn apart, unable to find her centre amidst the chaos of her soul. The signs are there in that picture if you know what to look for. I see it in the way her fingers grasp one another, white-knuckled, stiff, across the trim tautness of her waistline. She wouldn't have known it yet, but she was pregnant with me at the time. There would be no other children. The prolapsed uterus, she said, was the result of a collision during a basketball match, prevented her from carrying another child to term. My fingers laced together, seeking comfort in each other, as I'm reminded how easily her mishaps were explained away. Not for the first time, I find myself regretting the impulsive boast about my mother's good looks on the night we met. We were at a going away party of a mutual friend, and I had no idea who Michael was. He made a beeline for me, leaving a swath of fluttery young things in his wake. I only noticed him because of his height, that and the way his face lit up as he stalked across to my side of the room. I remember glancing around with mild interest at the people on either side, each looking as bemused by the giant bearing down on them as I must have. He was almost on top of me before I realised I was the object of his attentions. I'd started to step aside, worried he would juggernaut right through me, but he hauled himself to a stop, in time to steady me with his hand. When I regained enough composure to look up at him, he was standing feet apart, hands on hips, square in front of me. He sucked his breath through pursed lips and gave me the most disconcertingly frank appraisal I've ever had. Then he spread his hands and told me I had the most exquisite bone structure, and I just had to let him paint me. I thought it was a come-on, and shot back a comment that if he liked my face, he would have loved my mother's. 6 weeks and a completed portrait later, here I am, awaiting the grand unveiling. As a work in progress, Michael has refused to let me see it. Even today, he insisted I show him the promised photograph first. It is the only surviving picture of my mother, and I struggle to appear calm while he decrypts the story of the woman in the print. I concentrate on breathing and remind myself of the defiance I see in that image. Despite the forward curve of her shoulders, my mother's back is straight and her head is high. She pointedly refuses to look at the camera. Instead, she gazes over the photographer's shoulders, somewhere off towards the horizon. Even though her eyes are hidden behind sunglasses, the muscles along her jawline are tight. You can tell she's gritting her teeth, hiding her dentures. The story went that she had foolishly walked behind my father one day while he practiced his golf swing. He joked that she damn near ruined his club. My mother lost most of her front teeth that day. She hated wearing false ones, said they felt too big for her mouth and turned a smile into a rictus. She was very beautiful, Michael says, recalling me to the airy warmth of his studio. I nod and smile as he hands the photograph back across the table. Sorry, I say, I just miss her, you know. He narrows his eyes, purses his lips. I pray he won't ask any questions. Not today. He holds my gaze until I find it hard not to fidget. Then he squeezes my hands and releases me. Well, he says, lifting an eyebrow. My turn. His hands slap the tabletop. Full of mischief and secrets, he waltzes around to my side. With a flourish he bows, extending his hand like a courtier. He pulls me to my feet and draws me slowly towards the back of the studio where the portrait waits. As I approach, the canvas seems to grow larger. There's something different about it today. Perhaps it's the drop sheet covering it, or the way it's been turned toward the centre of the room. I feel it now as a palpable presence, one that has been growing all afternoon. A sense of disquieting anticipation settles over me as I draw near, and I might leave it there.
This is a poem that I made in response to a job advert for Melbourne Uni that wanted a female mathematician. It's called The Job. The man turned and said, "Do you apply to the department head?" "Yes," she chimed, smiled and gushed. "I've wanted this job ever so much." "Well, there is a lot of competition, so don't put your qualities in remission. 18 men of distinction, experience and tertiary wisdom. They are your foes, don't turn up your toes. But I have to say, experience and wisdom will make this way. Dear, dear Mr. Human Resources Man, I would like you to know I am what I am. I have the education and experience, but one more thing will make you serious. I am a female and I will diversify the department. This a man can't do, offence is not meant. I am a leader of young and old. I can delegate and scrub the floor mould. Don't expect me to be managing my role. I bring something more than macho rigmarole. So consider me with your utmost wisdom, because I'll add more than you know to the position."
going to read a kid's story called Sticky School Fate.
Hello. So this is a story that I've been reading throughout the year. So for those of you who don't know, Celeste is a witch who now lives in the mortal realm, and she's made some jam to sell at a school fete, and unbeknownst to her, the spell that she put on it has made it come to life. And in the meantime, her and her crow have had a bit of an argument about it, and so we're just going from there. So he's at home, she's at the school fete. Chapter 4. Popcorn Bowls and the Great Escape. Whistler continued to sit by the window, waiting for Celeste's return. He kept checking the mortal realm clock and had guessed she'd been gone for a little over an hour. He paced up and down the windowsill, checking for any signs of her. As the clock continued to tick, he began to stamp his little clawed feet. He sighed again and flew over to the front door. He looked for cracks, checking if there were any big enough for him to fit through. He found none. He then flew from room to room, seeing if Celeste had left a window open by mistake. She often did this. Nope, nothing. He was sealed inside with no way of getting out and flying over to the fete. The crow flew into the kitchen next, leaning gracefully on his perch on the dining table. Sitting there was the book, Mortal Realm Food. It was still open to the page with the jam recipe. Whistler hopped off his perch and sat beside it. He read the page carefully, trying to pinpoint where Celeste had gone wrong in her recipe. He knew something was wrong with that jam. Very wrong. He was determined to find out what before Celeste found herself in big trouble. All the ingredients seemed perfectly fine, except for an asterisk next to spindle root. He wasn't sure what that meant and looked at the method steps next. Step 12, the final step at the bottom of the page, had the asterisk marks next to it too. Whistler cocked his head to one side, wondering what all this could mean. The page was slightly folded at the bottom. Using his beak, he carefully unfolded the paper and attempted to flatten it with his foot. Now he could see the extra bit of writing the folded paper had concealed. Author's note. This is if you want your jam to come to life, which I highly recommend for mortal tea parties. It's a hoot watching them run around, screaming their heads off. If consumed, they can expect a rather painful tummy ache and drooping of the ears. If, however, you do not wish for this to occur, and you just want to make proper mortal jam, do not add the spindle root. Whistler opened and closed his beak as he reread the author's note another 3 times. This was not good. In fact, this was downright horrible. He had to get to that school fete and find Celeste. But how? There was no way of him getting out of the house.
Might need some magic. Thank you, Melissa. Coral. There's Coral hiding. Oh, there. You knew just when you weren't ready that I was going to call your name, didn't you? We haven't seen Coral for a few months, so welcome back.
Thank you.
2 months.
The back door was wide open when I got home. Mum never left doors open. Those damn flies, she'd say. I looked around the yard, past the passion fruit vine and into the vegetable garden, where I often found her when I got home from school. Hot chocolate coming up, she'd call, wiping her dirty hands on her old gardening t-shirt. I'd throw my bag on the laundry floor, sit up at the kitchen bench and wait for her to join me. But she wasn't in the garden. My cat Tibbs rubbed himself against me, a little rougher than usual, as if he was trying to tell me something. We turned and went into the house. Mum always had the radio going. I can't live without music, she'd say. But as I entered the kitchen, the only sounds were the soft tapping of the Venetian blinds, tickled by a breeze from the slightly open window, and the dripping of the kitchen tap that Dad kept promising to fix. Mum, I called. She was probably in the lounge, in her favourite chair by the window, reading. She was always reading. I'd die without a book, she'd say. The grandfather clock gonged the 1/4 hour as I crossed the passage, already grinning to return her smile. but the chair sat empty and alone. It glared at me. It seemed for a moment to rear up and start towards me. I backed away, and as I did, Tibbs wound himself around my legs, and we landed in a heap on the grey tiles of the passage. I shoved him off, and he slid across the floor and slunk away. A car purred along the street outside. There she was. I rushed out to meet her as she pulled into the driveway, but the car continued along the road, and I watched it turn the corner at the end of the street. I sat on the veranda step, the hot sun on my face. Tibbs came back and we waited together, knowing her car would be the next one, or the next. We jumped up every time, but the driveway stayed empty. The sun got too hot for Tibbs. He disappeared into the coolness of the passage and I followed him. It was then that I heard a sound, a sort of shuffling or rustling coming from my parents' bedroom at the top of the stairs. Mum never lay down during the day. It's time for sleeping when you're dead, she'd say. I wondered what she was doing up there and why she hadn't come down. Why hadn't she answered me when I called? Mum! I raced up the stairs, rapped on the door and turned the knob. Dad was sitting on the bed, his head in his hands. His usually perfect black hair hung limp and his shoulders shook. He was holding Mum's purple and red scarf, the one she wore whenever she went anywhere, and was winding it round and round his hand. Dad, what's the matter? I said. He jumped a bit and stared up at me. His eyes were weird and empty and wet. I'd never seen my father cry before. Dad, what's the matter? The scarf twisted tighter and tighter. I'm sorry, Em, he whispered. He wiped his sleeve across his running nose. Dad never wiped his nose with his sleeve. Never. What was going on? Where was Mum? He dropped his head again and looked back up at me. He was going to tell me something bad, really bad. I didn't want to know. I wanted to run away, downstairs and away. The grandfather clock tick-ticked. The Venetian blinds clunked and rattled. Tibbs jumped onto the bed, pushing himself through Dad's arms and settling into a ball in his lap. Dad didn't notice. Tears ran down his face as if he didn't care what he looked like. I cared. I wanted him to stop. I put my hands over my ears and shut my eyes. The bed squeaked and Annie was squatting in front of me. Em, he said. I opened my eyes. It was then that I realised Mum's closet door was open. The clothes that usually hung so neatly were gone. The shelves were empty too, except for Mum's red leather gloves, the ones Dad had given her for her birthday because she'd always wanted red leather gloves. I'm sorry, he said. I tried. Far away, the grandfather clock gonged the hour. I was 10 when my mum left me.
I'm going to read Seed from Stony Ground, story.
Hello. There we are. So this is a continuation of a story I've been reading at the last couple of Mike nights. Without waxing lyrical, at this point we're in the middle of a phone conversation between the main character Gavin, an ex-priest, and Father Oliver, the current parish priest. So, would you like me to come over later today, said Oliver. Not to lecture again, I promise. You're a good man, Oliver, said Gavin, and he heard how bitter it sounded, how condescending. Fool man, the tone had said. Foolish man who didn't know better yet. But I prefer to be alone. I'll respect that, but I'm not sure I agree with it. I thought you said no more lectures, snapped Gavin. He slammed the handset into its cradle. Felt the strain in his wrist from using too much force. Felt the light spraying throb as he grabbed the remote while easing back into the armchair, enduring the vapid purposelessness that agitated him so much about those morning talk shows. The church service was well and truly over by the time he relaxed into the routine, burning through the day, skipping between AFL and decades-old sitcom reruns until the sun vanished and he found a movie he'd seen several times already. It would be enough. Someone knocked on Monday, probably Father Oliver. Gavin hated himself for refusing to answer. Then found it funny when he thought of Oliver's initial accusations of Gavin acting the inadequate false leader to the parish, the false prophets, no longer preachers. Surely all is right in the world again. No. that Oliver never went that far. But to Gavin, the current priest's grievances were tangled. Was it compassion towards a fellow person in need that motivated his interest in Gavin, or the need to rebuke a challenge to his spiritual leadership? Really, to Gavin, both minds presented the same outcome. Oliver attempting to heal his broken predecessor, the ex-priest who had fallen from grace, and put him back on the right path. Too bad Gavin had already been healed by faith once before. He wasn't keen on trying to plug his wounds with faith and fresh new ideology again. Perhaps it hadn't worked all that well the first time, or else he wouldn't be in this position now, so many years later, feeling those old wounds leak and fester all over again. On Tuesday, Oliver had resorted to phoning. Gavin had picked up thinking it would be Dennis. Gavin, I appreciate you're going through a rough time, but we have traced the call, bellowed Gavin, and it's coming from inside the house. He hung up. A moment later, Oliver rang again and Gavin picked up. Out of your system yet? Said Oliver in an even tone. Gavin's mind raced for a snappy quote, but all he dredged up was, definitely, maybe, before hanging up again. He wasn't sure if there was a quote or just a rom-com title. Either way, maybe you could have more fun with this. And here he thought raging against a wall was a young man's game. By Thursday, Oliver had entered a reprieve in his siege on Gavin's front door and phone line. Gavin was left to watch TV in peace. He'd had it on all night and day, while they kept to his chair and got up only for the toilet and the meagre scraps in his pantry. His body was grumbling about the inability, his legs constantly falling asleep in the chair, so he'd have to lurch around the room cursing while the pins and needles swarmed through his legs and feet. He realised he'd gone to the phone and back a few times in those penitent lurching sessions, as if he expected to hear a ring. He didn't want to talk to Oliver. He had no quotes left to annoy him with. But Oliver wasn't who he was waiting for. Surprised you haven't called, Dennis, Gavin said to the phone. You normally hassle me by now. The phone had nothing to offer. I'm not being clingy, but it's been, 2 weeks? Don't think I haven't noticed. Just strange, that's all. Out of the usual. The TV's noise cut in from the next room, but it was starting to frustrate Gavin. There were only diminishing returns from the distraction. And that endless problem of couch potatoes from the days before Netflix. All those channels and still nothing on. Damn it all. Even when he'd saturated himself in news stories and movies, the old ones always bobbed to the surface. He was a master of sermons with no one to sermonise to. He hadn't realised how maddening that could be.
Your booklet we can put up the front.
Yes. How did I anticipate that?
So Len has now, he was meant to have his book last month, but the printer's binder broke down, so we had to wait a bit longer. So Len has some copies tonight as well, if anyone wants to purchase any. And I think are you going to tell us now about your launch? Or not ready yet?
Well, it's not ready yet, but I'll
Okay.
just...
I'll let you go.
Thank you. I have a group of poems to read in my book, which is Readings from the Courthouse and Other Poems. We'll be doing a book launch in early September at St Margaret's Church in Eltham. I haven't got all the details organised yet. Okay. 100 years ago, pretty much to the day, there was a battle in World War I at Fromelles. In the early 90s, I went to France and Belgium and on a tour of all of those areas. I have to say it was a very powerful and moving experience. I was in the middle of a drought then, I couldn't write, but in the last 18 months I have in fact written some poems about that experience which are in the book. But first I'm going to read one which is not in the book. It should be, but it's not in the book quite simply because I wrote it 2 weeks ago. Oblivion. The pathway to my oblivion was clear. Pick up your feet, lad, and go forward. Somehow I smiled. Pick up your feet? No mean feat in the bloody mud and devastation surrounding me. My captain did as he bade me and strode into the maelstrom. Pick up your feet, lad. I followed. These are all fairly short ones too. The second one really follows on from that, and it's called Missing. I turned my face to catch the rain. Strength failing, I embraced the gift it gave. Gently, the rain enshrouded my face and washed my life away. Next one is called Soldier. Death lies at my doorway, torn letter littering. Dry dusted leaves, wind-blown, mingle with the sound of a mother's keening. A life sacrificed, gone. If you ever go to Belgium and you're looking at World War I sites, the place to go is Ypres, because there's a gate there called the Menin Gates, and it was raised by the people of the town, and it has the names of all the missing Allied soldiers from the area. There's some 247,000 names there, and that's just the Allied soldiers, that's not counting the Germans who died as well. This poem is about that place. The Lost. I stood inside the gate, transfixed, held by the sadness sealed within the bugle's echo. I did not stand alone. I stood with the long dead, the lost. I stood with their names surrounding, confounding me. So many names, so many names, so many dead. And my eyes blurred as the silence came, and I wept for those who were gone. I wept for their loss. The lost are honoured each day within this gate, but I can leave. The lost cannot. The last one was written by a rather young person at the age of 17, and it's not about World War I. It's called Nothing Changes. There is a war that rages amidst the ruin of man, the degeneration of the spirit, winning in Vietnam. It is the innocent who suffer, their countryside the spoil. A woman, a child must die to gain an inch of soil. But complacently we sit at home, pretending not to hear the anguished cries of our fellow man, a sound we've learnt to fear.
Thanks, Brendan. Linda Carter is going to read some memoir. 2 boots, a pack and a rainbow hat. Interesting.
Thank you. It's actually based on several different walking experiences, memories from back in time. January 2012. I upend the pack. Thermals, gloves, boots. A stripy braid emerges. With warm black lining and chin-hugging earmuffs, the knitted rainbow hat will be perfect. Sounds like preparations for a visit during winter to Victoria's alpine country, but no, it's a Melbourne summer morning amidst a bizarre snap of cold weather, and I'm out for a walk in the park. I knock the woolen plaits under my chin. My destination is a track in an outer eastern suburban park, walking for pleasure with fitness in mind. The path winds around a reed-fringed lake, decorated with ducks, over a wind-swept green hill, swooping past pines and rocks into a shady grove. I stride purposefully to fend off chills. Dogs drag at leashes. Seniors stroll and cyclists ting a warning. After a couple of circuits, I rest in the dappled shade, hat in hand, walking back in time. March 2004. I'm preparing to tackle Mount Cobras in new leather boots, with a borrowed pack for equipment, food, water and clothes, trying not to feel guilty when mine weighs only 14 kilos and Peter Head's 22 kilos. We drive east of Omeo via Benambra into the Alpine National Park, resting overnight before an uphill trek through thickets and scrub. I set a cracking pace, for a while, shoulder straps digging painfully. I drink water to lighten the load, and clear my head. Our tent perches on the saddle between Cobras 1 and 2. The air is crisp and clean, the stars as brilliant as you would expect halfway up a mountain. I sleep like a baby until noises start. I can hear something. I poke my head out of the tent. We're surrounded by brumbies. I should have expected this, having read Alan Mitchell's Silver Brumby as a child. It's magical, exhilarating and slightly unnerving. Wild horses snort and paw, not interested in our canvas intrusion to their turf. I ease back and watch until they leave in a flurry of dust. The next morning we notice a pyramid of horse manure as we continue on the way to the 1,833 metre high trig point. I'm captivated by spectacular views whilst we traverse the rocky road to that compelling triangular shape. I nearly make it. The last few vertical metres prove too difficult, and I content myself with a staged photo. We cross over a trickling creek and decant and throw away litres of unnecessary drinking water. Trot downhill, reaching the car park before dark. My walk up and down the Cobras has been tiring, satisfying, totally inspiring. June 2008. I'm back in the burbs. Same boots, different purpose. My new pack carries heavy books and a brick, comfortable straps cinched for maximum support. The steep training circuit bypasses houses, schools and bemused shoppers. I'm now 53 years old, gearing up to backpack around India and trek to Everest Base Camp in Nepal. July 2016. After all that excitement 8 years ago, I now regularly stroll along my favourite linear walking track between creek and freeway. I'm the one wearing a rainbow Nepalese head warmer, weather permitting. Thank you.
Excuse me. And Robson. I don't think you've met before, have you?
No, no, experience something on that.
Oh, really good.
Claire was still waiting. She looked at the clock, only 5 minutes to go, and she still had not received a reply about the report she had submitted earlier today. Her eyes grew heavy in front of the computer. She jolted herself awake. She was exhausted and frustrated. Graham had inundated her with invoices and counts this afternoon, one after the other, far more than anyone else in the team. You can handle it, he would say. Claire knew better than to ask Graham about a report and representing it. He never gave her an answer till it suited him. She checked her emails, still no answer. Claire was proud of the work she had done on the report. It was detailed and very innovative, and very outside the square, but also very practical and logical. She was looking forward to presenting it at the workshop next week, being able to move into another area of the investment bank she worked in and to expand her skill set. Claire was convinced that Graham, her boss, was friendly by independent women. His wife was a stay-at-home mum who baked and cleaned, and according to Graham, treated him like a king. Yeah, Claire thought, this day has finally ended. Claire walked out of the office and into the London street. It was early evening and she felt the icy cold wind slap her in the face. She tightened her bright yellow scarf around her neck and headed to the train station, walking briskly. Canary Wharf railway station was crowded, quite normal at this time of the evening. The train pulled up a few minutes later. It was already full of commuters, lots of suits carrying briefcases. Claire got in and managed to find a seat. She sat down and put her earpiece into her ear and turned on her music. She had a 40-minute one break. She looked like she'd been crying. Probably a hard day at the office. The girl was on her iPhone complaining about her boyfriend, then started on her job. She worked in a clothes shop in Oxford Street and her boss, Bess, as she called her, was apparently a monster. Claire smiled. It made her think of Graham. She had never had a leader like him before. There were whispers that the company had been trying to get rid of him for a while. He certainly made her life difficult, and her productivity appeared to be lower than the team members as he gave her the most invoices and accounts and the ones that were most problematic. His trio of stars, as he called them, were given the simple invoices that were easy and took 5 minutes to do. Claire needed a new challenge. She needed to move into a different direction. She had really reached her limit. Graham had convinced Wanda, one of the new girls in the team, that she needed to bake cakes and bring them into the office once a week. It would help her move up in the company. Wanda was complaining this morning. She was exhausted. She was up until late baking. She had baked a chocolate cake, a flourless cake and a gluten-free cake to cater for everyone. Suddenly Claire jolted. She heard a phone ring. It was Graham. Claire, I have decided to run with Wanda's report instead. She will present it at the workshop next week. Claire replied, why? My ideas were fresh and innovative and also practical. The workshop is all about innovation, brainstorming about better workplace practices. Claire, I know you see yourself as a bigger picture person. I'd call it overthinking, Graham said. Claire bit her tongue and refrained from replying. Last time she told Graham he was a small picture person and lacked vision, she ended up with 3 days of botched up invoices to correct and redo. Claire just said goodbye, Graham, and hung up. Claire saw her stop, got off the train. As she walked down the platform, a homeless man approached her. He asked her for $5. She continued walking then, felt sorry for him. It was extremely cold in London tonight. Suddenly the events of the day did not seem as bad. She at least had choices. Claire suddenly felt relieved. Claire turned back and handed the man a $5 note. She did not say anything to him, nor did he thank her. She headed into the car park and got into a car and sped off. As Claire turned the key and walked into the house, there he was waiting for her, looking so pleased to see Claire, his tail wagging, a smile on his face, her dependable and adorable little pooch. As Claire bent and gave the pooch a pat, he grunted his delight that his mistress had come home. Claire smiled and felt positive again. Today had been a day worth forgetting, and she was leaving it behind and moving forward. And like Scarlett O'Hara, she quoted those famous words, tomorrow is another day.
Okay, Les, into baking me a cake. Bring it to work tomorrow. See no answer? Silence? Okay. Joe is going to read some poems. Sweet Alice in Drought and My Special Rose.
I won't take up all my time. There's only teeny weeny, so somebody else can have my extra time. Now, Sweet Alice in Drought. It's a little bit out of time at the moment because it's about Alice Springs and they have had some rain, but I've been up there when they hadn't. Cradled in smooth ancient arms, the life stream in her vein, once generous in the past, now gleefully, capriciously withdraws its favours, leaving her thirsty, feeling rejected. Closer creeps the desert, swallowing verdant strips, while cultivated sports fields contrast with gardens of sand. Rebellious galahs hold noisy union meetings in wilting trees. The red centre is blowing away. When, oh when will it rain? Now this is a little bit of spite because somebody gave me a bunch of roses once and I thought to myself, they're really lovely, I'd love to keep one and grow it. So I cut a piece off and stuck it in a pot and it grew. My Special Rose. Sweet dewdrop of green, within unfathomed beauty hides. In gentle patience you move to birth. Your hidden glories swell a leaf-tight nest. I scarce can wait in pain delight. With silent grace you burst your bonds of green and share your secret treasure with the world. A golden ecstasy of reflected sun. You open up your smile with generous gaze and linger with an air of sweet perfume, till life is spent. Then one by one, your petals drop like tired butterflies, and strew the path beneath with wings of gold.
going to read.
Shall I get out of the
You
chair?
should get out of the chair. That's what happens when you're on the throne. Hard to get off the throne. Maybe a song. Why are you maybe?
Well, if I don't know, if I've got through it, that's all.
Oh, okay.
Slap myself around a bit to wake up now. I'm warm sitting there. Old age is not something to recommend, I tell you. If you can avoid it, though it's better to be over the hill than under it. One of the things about age that happens to women is that they lose the hair on their head for some reason, and some incredible reason they're growing again on your chin. But in my case, I found half an eyebrow missing, which is quite ridiculous, and this poem is about that. I've an early morning ceremony, a vital procedure for me. I fix my face with lipstick and powder, so what you see is an improved me. It takes me forever, it's such a formidable task. For a detailed procedure you just don't ask. It involves spat filler and lots of varnish with constant polishing, so it doesn't tarnish. But there is one thing that's essential for me. I have to draw on half a left eyebrow, you see. In the process of age, half my left eyebrow has gone. It just disappeared. It's ridiculous. And it looks all wrong. I have a tremor caused by Parkinson's disease, and my hands shake and wave around in the breeze. To draw on one eyebrow is a funny sight. It looks as though both hands are going in for a fight. A magnifying mirror rocking left and right, and then the other hand shaking, holding a pencil tight. Although it's hilarious and at times a bit of fun, how ridiculous to lose half an eyebrow. I wonder where it's gone. And I will sing a song, because there's a lot of people who haven't heard them, so I can get away with singing, boring some of the other people. This is about loss, a love that is not able to be fulfilled because the people are already tied up with somebody else, so to speak. I know you feel the same, I've seen it in your eyes, but we could never be, we couldn't stand the lies. I'll never feel your lips on mine, you'll never hold me in your arms, so this is goodbye. We both have families that we could never leave, and not for us a time of secrets and deceit. So I must go away before you say how you feel. So this is goodbye. My tread is heavy and my tears are falling free. I walk away from a love I know could never be. With every step I take, I feel my heart will break, 'cause loving you has just come too late. So this is goodbye, so this is goodbye. Thank you.
And we don't get bored if we've heard the song. We don't get bored if we've heard the song. So there. Shell. Can't say hi. No. Come on down. Is your surname actually Brave? That's awesome. Shell Brave. I don't know what you were worried about at all. Thank you for that, Shell. I'm blind. The glasses. Jeannie Meekins is going to read an excerpt from a kids' novel. Courtney Case and the Hobble.
explain some sort of maths problem and I was trying to stay awake. I leaned my elbow on the desk and put my head in my hand. My eyes drifted between Mrs. Carson and the clock. A knock on the door immediately attracted my attention. "Come in, Mr. Edders," called Mrs. Carson. "Good morning, Mrs. Carson," said Mr. Edders as he came into the room. He had a pile of papers in his hands. "Good morning, children." "Good morning, Mr. Edders," we returned in a dragged-out, boring tone. "May I have a word with your children before recess?" Mr. Edders asked Mrs. Carson. "Certainly," she replied with a smile. "Great," I sighed as the bell rang. "Now, children, this won't take long," Mr. Edders promised. "I suppose you've all heard about the frog survey that's being held across the country?" We had. "The Frog Research Group have asked schools to become involved." I was immediately interested. "It involves visiting parks and creeks in the local area and reporting back any evidence of frog activity. I was wondering if any of you children would be interested in participating." Investigation, discovery, evidence? My hand flew up immediately. "I thought you might," Mrs. Carson smiled. She leaned towards Mr. Edders. Courtney's a bit of a detective in her spare time. "So I've heard." I could see that he was thrilled to have me as part of the team. My best friend Laura also volunteered and a couple of other kids put their hands up. I was not too pleased when Albie Halstead put his hand up. Albie's the annoying kid that every class seems to have, and I'm pretty sure he only volunteered to get out of doing classwork. But then Brian Riley put his hand up. I like Brian, even if he is Albie's best friend and seems to get into trouble a lot. "That's nearly half of your class, Mrs. Carson," Mr. Edders remarked. "It's good to see so many children concerned about our environment." The frog people sent Mr. Ramsey and Miss Havers to the school to talk to us. All the kids who were involved in the survey sat in Mr. Edders' classroom. "Okay, children, you might like to take some notes," Mr. Edders advised. Some of the kids opened their books and started writing. "Laura, are you taking notes?" I whispered. "Yes," she answered. "Courtney, that means you too," Mr. Edders told me. "But Laura takes all my notes," I tried to explain. Mr. Edders just frowned. I sighed, picked up my pencil and opened my book. I pretended to take notes, but I was too interested in what Mr. Ramsey and Miss Havers had to say. "Every few years we like to survey the frog populations," Mr. Ramsey began. "Frogs are a good indication of what the ecosystem is like in general. We like to know what sorts of frogs are around and how many there might be. With all the threats to the environment and the waterways, a lot of frog populations have been decreasing." "You mean because of global warming?" I asked. "Not only that," Miss Havers answered. "With all the areas that are being built up, the native animal habitats are getting smaller and smaller. Introduced animals are also killing off the wildlife." She turned and pointed to one of the pictures stuck on the whiteboard. "The southern gastric brooding frog, for example." "The gas exploding frog," Albie blurted out. "Gastric brooding frog," Miss Havers corrected. "It hasn't been seen for about 20 years and it's considered to be extinct." "Of course they're extinct if they all exploded." Miss Havers took a breath. "It's also known as the southern platypus frog." Melissa put up her hand. "Miss Havers, a platypus isn't a frog." I was fascinated. I leaned towards Laura. "Have you got all that?" "A platypus isn't a frog." Laura spoke loud as she wrote. "Got it." Miss Havers had a strained look on her face. Her eyes were bulging and it looked like she was going to explode. "The gastric brooding frog is a small frog," she continued. "The female swallows its eggs. They hatch inside her and are regurgitated as live froglets." "You mean she eats her babies and spews them up again?" Brian's eyes widened in excitement. "And they're alive? That is one cool frog." Mr. Ramsey took over. He pointed to another picture. "The eastern banjo frog, or pobblebonk." "Albie, don't even think about it," Mr. Edders warned her. "You can go straight to the principal's office." Albie closed his mouth and said nothing.
I think kids are just like saying the word pobblebonk. Thanks, Jeannie. Paula Wilson has a short story. Called Short Story.
I've got a children's story. I won't finish it. "No, it can't be," Bobby says. "Of course it is," I tell him. "The kraken isn't found in Australia." "Who says?" I drop my bike into the grass and sit on the wooden fence surrounding the playground, like I'm sitting on a horse or a Harley. I haven't got a horse or a Harley, but I reckon it wouldn't be much different than sitting on the round log. Mr. Larkin, Bobby, picks up a piece of bark and chucks it up the slide. "When?" I couldn't remember him saying that. "Yesterday. He said the kraken that's not real." "I've been sick yesterday." "Well, what happened to McLaughlin's boat?" "That's all we've been talking about for the last 5 days, since a fishing boat went down in the harbour. All they found was floating bits of wood and scrap. No bodies, no McLaughlin's dog, nothing. He didn't know, but said it couldn't be the Kraken, because it's only found in the sea near Norway and Iceland, and it's not real. It's just a legend, like the bunyip. Well, what about the noise? They say an awful moaning came out of the fog, and screeching and screaming, and the sound of tearing wood and metal. Bobby shrugs and throws some more bark up the slide. It slips down and joins the pile collected at the bottom. You remember the pirate movie with the Kraken in it? Well, that wasn't in Norway or Iceland. Bobby doesn't say anything, just continues chucking bark. And remember the noise? It frightened her so bad I spilt my popcorn all over the place. Some even went over the seat in front and landed in some grandmother's hair. It was so funny. She didn't notice, and when we followed her and her grandkids out, there were 3 pieces stuck in her white hair. We cracked up as we walked behind her. Bobby wanted to tell her, but she was gone before we could work out who would do it. Yeah, and the smell. The smell was awful. It seeped out into the cinema every time the Kraken rose from the depths. I love 3D movies, Bobby says. So it has to be the Kraken? I don't know. Nobody said nothing about there being a smell. Well, there's one way to find out. No, I am. What, you chicken or something? I say, real serious like. But inside I'm smiling. I know if I want to get Bobby to do something, that's all I have to say. I'm going as soon as we get a foggy night. You can't go on your own, Bobby says. He used to get all worked up, jumping around saying, I'm not chicken. But I think he might have worked out what I was up to and hasn't done that kind of thing for a while. Now he says things like, you can't go on your own, or you'll need help. So it was decided, first foggy night we would sneak out and go and see. You'd reckon middle of winter, near the sea, we'd be out there straight away, but no, it wasn't until 4 nights later that we get a fog. I ring Bobby. Tonight is all I say, just in case someone is listening in. We planned on leaving at midnight when our parents would be in bed and asleep by then. I grab my camera and climb out of my window. I pull my bike out from under a hanging bush near the back gate and head down the road. It's real foggy. I can hardly see the front wheel of my bike. Doesn't matter. I could get to Bobby's in my sleep, seeing that he lives only 5 houses away. When I get to his house, he comes out of the fog like a ghost. It is spooky, but there was no way I would let on that he scared me. Let's go. Luckily, I have ridden with Dad to the harbour a million times when he does repairs on the boats. And he was doing repairs all the time, seeing he's the only boat mechanic in Reefton. Still, it's slow going. We ride on the road because there are no paths along our street. We miss the turn off and have to backtrack. When we get to the dead end, once we are on the road to the harbour, we ride on the path and follow the fences. Okay.
Thanks, Paula. Was there anyone who wanted to read that didn't put their name on the list? No? Cool. Richard. Lucky last for the night. Richard Tremper is going to read a short story. It's from your book or is it something else?
No,
Something else?
Thanks, Blaise. Now, this is on a subject that some of you might be able to identify with. It's called writer's block. It came as a shock to realise that, having spent most of his life earning a living from writing, he had no imagination, or hardly any anyway. Sure, he could write, he knew that. But gradually it dawned on him that mostly what he wrote was about events, happenings, things that existed, or which in one way or another he'd observed. He had wondered for a long time, maybe years now, why his head had been creatively empty. He'd been reasonably prolific at one stage, but hadn't written anything worthwhile in ages, almost as long as he could remember. There'd been the poem he wrote after Christine died, of course, but that was different. He knew it was good, or at least he thought it was,
but it was born of emotion. It hadn't just come from nowhere. It had taken an event to prick his creativity. And it wasn't just creativity. It was emotion spilling onto the page. Even now, he couldn't read it without his eyes welling up. One well-meaning admirer of his work had suggested at one stage that he read it at one of the poetry reading nights he attended from time to time. Read it? He doubted he could he'd even be able to look at the page in front of an audience without losing it. He wanted to write, he knew that, and the myriad journalistic awards and the 2 published books testified that he could. But he also knew you can't write about nothing. He imagined his skull, vacant. He'd heard of writer's block, but how long could that last? Forever? Sometimes he compared himself to John Keats, not in talent, but in representing the opposite ends of the spectrum of productivity. One of the Keats quotes he knew was, "When I have fears that I may cease to be, before my pen has gleaned my teeming brain." Teeming brain? Where do you get one of those? He knew Keats had one because, after all, he had died at age 25, but is recognised as one of the great poets of the English language. But how do you become as prolific as Keats, he wondered. Keats, who apparently had the ability to create masterpieces out of the air. Simple. Imagination. At least a fertile imagination can produce quantity, albeit that quality requires talent. He'd heard that the best way to defeat writer's block was to simply sit in front of the keyboard and start writing. Of course, Keats didn't have a keyboard, but in his day that probably equated to picking up a quill. One of the facets of writing fiction he had always enjoyed was the power, the ability to be God, to make your characters do what you wanted them to do. The knowledge that if you got tired of a character or he somehow offended you, you could throw him under a bus. That wasn't recommended, of course, in the middle of a semi-serious story totally unrelated to buses, but the fact remained. If it took your fancy, you could do it. But where was this story about the lack of a story actually going? Well, nowhere really. Back around the block to where it started. And we all know which block that is, don't we?
Kev, are there any announcements that my brain hasn't held on to? Yeah, we'll do the door. Kev's bringing down the tickets for the door prize. Everyone want to get your ticket out? Someone didn't get a ticket? Paulette didn't get a ticket yet. So the prize tonight is... has anyone heard of Thank You Water? Yeah. Social enterprise? I saw one of the founders speak at an event a few weeks back, and he was selling his book. Actually bought a few extras, so that's the prize tonight. It's actually a good read. I'd love to hear the feedback from whoever wins it. Everyone got a ticket out? Watch Paulette win it. Orange 54.
Oh, close.
Come on down. Okay, congratulations. Yeah, yeah. Well done. So again, congratulations to Sean O'Leary. Kev, can we take a photo with Sean and his little certificate?
after.
Yeah. Also, we have information about workshops and what have you up on the table. We also have a list there for anyone who would like to be on our mailing list if you aren't already. That's just for our newsletter that goes out twice a month. So thanks all for coming. Feel free to hang around, have some more supper, and we'll see you again next month. Thanks.
Alright? We'll take it up near the Busybird thing. Just let me do this and I'll come up.